In recent weeks, Nigeria has witnessed a surge in violence that has left communities reeling and raising urgent questions about security and governance in the country. On Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue, we intend to shed light on two tragic incidents: the horrific killings in Plateau State and the brutal lynching of Fulani hunters in Uromi, Edo State. Together, these events highlight the urgent need for comprehensive action to address the escalating violence and restore peace across our nation. Join us shortly. I'm Adiawa AI. You're welcome back to the show. Now, like I began by saying in the earlier phase, in recent weeks, we're talking about incessant killings, which has quite become pronounced, particularly in Plateau State, and before then, we had lynching in Uromi, Edo State. Now, Plateau State, often celebrated for its breathtaking landscapes and rich cultural heritage, has become a haunting tableau of violence and despair. The recent tragic events have underscored a harrowing narrative of suffering that has gripped communities across its region. Now, on April the 2nd, a brutal assault by Fulani terrorists left 50 individuals dead, displacing 1,800 others and setting ablaze 383 homes in Huti, Josho, and Darfur. Likewise, surrounding areas in the Manguno and Bokus local government area of Plateau State. Now, this wave of violence reflects a disturbing trend in Nigeria, where the state appears increasingly powerless to protect its citizens within the states. The government's response has been characterized by inaction, as evidenced by the helplessness with which it has observed the carnage. Security forces led by their heads have made symbolic visits to affected areas. Yet these gestures do little to alleviate the overwhelming sense of insecurity among the populace. Now, such responses evoke the grim reality of a state that is losing its grip on the fundamental duty of protecting its citizens. Now, the Global Terrorism Index underscores Nigeria's precarious position, ranking it 6th in the world in 2025, with a score of 7.658 out of 10. Now, this ranking actually reflects a steady deterioration or dilapidation, with Nigeria's previously placed 8th in both 2023 and 2024. The ongoing conflict in Plateau State is emblematic of a broader crisis that has spiraled out of control, as the Nigerian government has seemingly ceded its authority to the non-state actors who now operate with impunity. Now, the Tinubu administration has been marked by violence, evidently, as we can see, with the first major attack occurring during 2023 Christmas season, when 62 villages within the same Plateau State were actually assaulted, resulting in 140 deaths. Now, despite the scale of these tragedies, no perpetrators have been held accountable, further eroding public trust in the government's ability to maintain order and justice. Now, following this period, Fulani attackers have continued their onslaught, wreaking havoc on local communities with devastating consequences. In response to the escalating violence, Governor Caleb Mutfwang, governor of Plateau State, has initiated meetings with various interest groups and security agencies in an attempt to quell the ongoing crisis. Be that as it may, in any case, the effectiveness of these meetings remains to be seen, as the historical context of violence in Plateau State raises questions about the government's commitments to genuine resolutions. If we go back into the 90s, since 1994, the region has witnessed a relentless cycle of violence, beginning with the tragic loss of 5 lives due to community tensions or clashes over local governance. The situation also intensified between 2001 and 2005, claiming over 2,000 lives. Leading the country then was the President Olusegun Obasanjo to declare a state of emergency. Now, he attributed this failure, Olusegun now to be precise, he attributed this failure to restore peace to Governor Joshua Darie, a narrative that continues to confuse and frustrate citizens seeking justice and safety. Now, the central government, as they choose to maintain control over security apparatus, now from the police to the military, efforts to quell the persistent cycle of violence has repeatedly fallen short. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's recent declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers, just for reference purpose, serves as a reminder of the government's reliance on familiar yet ineffective measures to actually be actualized. Despite such declarations, the specter of violence continues to be borne or loom large over Plateau State. Now, a report according to Human Rights Watch reveals that since 2001, conflicts in the region have resulted in the tragic loss of more than 7,000 lives and displacement of approximately 220,000 individuals. The situation escalated dramatically in January 2010 when police reported that 326 people were killed in Jos, the state's capital, following clashes between sectarian gangs. Sectarian here, I mean Muslim and Christian gangs. Now, the violence in Plateau State is complex, if you will agree, from my narrative, which I've just explained, with the underlying causes often tied to religious, ethnic, communal, or gang-related tensions. A recent analysis by primeprogress.com highlights how the nature of these conflicts can vary significantly depending on the geographical context, underscoring the multifaceted nature of the crisis. Unfortunately, the political leadership, rather than offering solutions, seem to actually exacerbate the chaos. Now, for instance, when I mean by exacerbating the chaos, I want to give you an instance here, for instance. During May 2004, a meeting in Jos aimed to addressing the recurring violence. The then Olusegun administration, Obasanjo, directed blame at the leadership of CAN, Christian Association of Nigeria, an action interpreted by many as at that time as a diversionary tactics to evade responsibility, thereby shifting the blame. This lack of accountability and decisive action has become a hallmark of successive administrations, with none managing to stem the tide of violence. The deployment of special military forces or units to Plateau State will not and has not yielded desired peace. Instead, increase the bloodshed and also intensify the tensions. Observers suggest that these clashes are partly fueled by competition over land between indigenous ethnic groups and Fulani herdsmen, leading to mutual accusations of ethnic cleansing. However, this is not the sole contributing factor to the violence. A myriad of reasons, including climate change, attack by violent Fulani herdsmen on settled farmers, economic disparities, political tensions, indigenous settlers disputes, and an increasing population, of course, water scarcity, not to forget illegal mining, which is actually compounding the situation. The need for a comprehensive approach to address these issues, which I've just mentioned, has never been more urgent. A critical component of any viable solution involves the decisive disarming of all warring factors by security agencies. Now, while authorities frequently claim to make arrests, the lack of documented convictions raises concerns about the effectiveness of the efforts and the overall commitment to restoring peace. Recent incidents such as the tragic April 2 attacks in Bokos, where heaps of yams were set ablaze, highlight a disturbing trend of clashes over land and resources, such as the acts of destruction not only threatens individual livelihood here, it also exacerbates the already dire food scarcity which is confronting the nation. Now, when farmers are unable to access their lands due to violence, the implication for food security will be quite profound and far-reaching. The ongoing conflict between violent herders and indigenous communities across Nigeria demands urgent attention because it seems to be a recycling trend. These herders often claim they are in search of grazing land, yet their actions have led to a cycle of violence that has destabilized rural areas and threatened agricultural production. It will actually therefore be imperative that government authorities at all levels take decisive actions to rein in these violence groups. A sustainable solution lies in the establishment of ranches in various states, which could effectively curtail the practice of open grazing and reduce conflicts over land. Moreover, the urgent need for security reforms cannot be overstated. The lawmaking body, the legislature, the National Assembly, must actually prioritize the accelerated approval of the establishment of a state police or the state police forces in time of rising insecurity. It is quite crucial for governors to have the authority to oversee the security apparatus within their states. This local oversight can lead to more effective responses to unique security challenges facing different regions. This multifaceted nature of our security its challenges actually is compounded by a growing population. Let's not forget that fact. And the influx of foreigners through Nigeria's porous borders, particularly the northern region. The existing federal police system, if I might visit that, which has proven to be ineffective, is ill-equipped to handle the diverse security needs of our vast nation. It's quite absurd to expect a single federal police to force a single federal police force, actually, I beg your pardon, to manage security across every corner of Nigeria, particularly when the current system has been marked by well-documented failures, as evidently seen all across media. Now, compounding these issues, a staggering 150,000 out of 380,000 police officers in Nigeria are reportedly attached to VIPs, leading a significant shortfall in the number of officers available to protect ordinary citizens. This misallocation of resources severely hampers the ability of law enforcement to address the needs of the populace. Now, additionally, the Nigerian Armed Forces, I'm talking about the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, are stretched thin, if we may look at it, with military personnel deployed in all 36 states to combat banditry, Islamic insurgency in the north, most precisely. This overextension raises concerns about the military's capacity to effectively manage security threats while also addressing the needs of the civilian population. Now, in contrast, other countries such as the US, the United States, operates a multi-layered policing system that actually allows for a localized response to security issues. Now, for instance, with approximately 18,000 police forces in the US as we speak, policing is tailored to meet the specific needs of different communities. We have the sheriffs, we have, just to mention a few. Nigeria stands out as only a nation among 26 federal states that does not actually practice or comply with similar activities, just as I've mentioned in the US. Now, I will term this as unwise, given our unique security landscape. Going back or falling back to Plateau, it is a stark reminder of the ongoing violence and instability which has raised critical questions regarding the adequacy of our leadership and the response of our governments to crisis. Tinubu's response to the escalating violence has drawn significant criticism. While his residence was reportedly under threat, he chose to travel to France for what many have termed as a walking visit. This decision is quite disturbing, especially when compared to the actions of leaders in other nations who typically cut short international engagements in the face of domestic crisis. Notably, how many crisis zones has President Tinubu actually visited since his election? Frankly speaking, if I might ask ourselves the truth, a leader's presence during turbulent times at home is not just symbolic but essential for fostering national unity and reassurance. History has shown here in Nigeria that past chief executives have often prioritized international diplomacy over pressing domestic issues. I give you a typical example. In 1983, President Shehu Shagari was in India while the NET building burned down. Similarly, Goodluck Jonathan was campaigning in Kanu during the heartbreaking news of the abduction of the Chibok girls in April. Now, more recently, Muhammad Buhari spent an extended period in the United Kingdom for medical treatment while Nigeria faced series of various crises. Now, unfortunately, these patterns which I've just mentioned reflect a troubling trend of disengagement from pressing issues at home. The situation in Plateau State is exacerbated by the rising prices of food items, which the locals won't want to come to terms with, directly linked to the violent displacement of farmers across the nation. These ongoing acts of impunity by herdsmen should be no longer tolerated by the government. It is quite disheartening to witness selective outrage from northern leaders who express significant concern over lynching of 16 Fulani travelers, but seem to overlook the tragic loss of 50 lives in Plateau State. Such disparities in reaction diminish the value of human life and highlight a disturbing trend of prioritizing certain narratives over others. This inability to curtail the violence perpetrated by headsmen is a damning indictment of our government and security agencies. Compounding this issue is Nigeria's legal system, because they cannot be left out. I've mentioned the executive. I have also mentioned the National Assembly. Now, zeroing on the Nigeria's legal system, which often discourages individuals from defending their communities against attacks in the name of established laws of the land. A recent ruling of the Supreme Court upheld the unjust conviction of Sunday Jackson, a farmer in Adamawa State, I beg your pardon, simply for defending his property from an invasion. This precedent actually sends a chilling message to citizens across their spines who are left vulnerable and disempowered in the face of violence. Now, furthermore, the status of the Wase local government area in Plateau State has become a contentious topic since General Ibrahim, IBB, designated Wase as a distinct LGA and federal constituency for the Fulani. Local indigenous communities have reportedly felt marginalized and neglected. The socio-political dynamics in Plateau State continue to deteriorate, raising urgent concerns about equitable governance and representation. Now, coming to Nigeria at large, the country grapples with the implications of ongoing violence in not just Plateau State, but everywhere. The signs of a failing state are becoming increasingly evident as the inability of the government to effectively manage security and uphold the rule of law not only threatens stability in Plateau State or any other state, but also poses a broader risk to national unity and peace. A concerted or joint effort involving dialogue, reconciliation, and probably a genuine commitment to addressing the root causes of conflict will be essential for the future purpose in troubled regions. Without such measures, frankly speaking, the cycle of violence is likely to persist, further entrenching Nigeria's status as a nation in crisis. The stark reality is that Plateau State, once a symbol of unity and beauty, now bears the scars of a failed response to violence and insecurity. These repeated tragedies serve as a somber reminder that without decisive action and accountability from governments, the cycle of violence will continue to persist, leaving communities in mourning and the state in disarray. As we reflect on these developments, the need for urgent and effective measures cannot be overstated. The people deserve more than mere promises. They deserve safety, justice, and restoration of peace. The plight of every citizen serves as a somber reminder that the urgent need for effective governance and a robust security framework to address challenges must begin to rise up today, particularly in the context of Plateau State and Uromi, which we'll be talking about in our next phase of the discussion. You're welcome back to the show. Earlier, we were talking about the killings in Plateau State. Now, in another recent killing, we will be talking about the Uromi killings. Now, in late March, our nation was rocked by a tragic and unacceptable event: the brutal killing of 16 Fulani hunters in Uromi, located at Edo North local government area of Edo State. Now, this heinous act is not merely a standalone incident, but rather a glaring symptom of a fractured security and justice system that has left many Nigerians vulnerable and fearful. The circumstances surrounding the Uromi killings are deeply unsettling. A mob fueled by accusations that the hunters were complicit in ongoing security breaches affecting local farmers descended upon them with lethal intent. The violence escalated to the point where the hunters were forcibly removed or ejected from their vehicles, lynched, and bodies desecrated and dismembered. This gruesome episode captured a disturbing viral video as evidently seen across social media, sparked intense discussions about the state of security in Nigeria, the rising ethnic tensions, and the government's apparent inability to shield its citizens from such rampant violence. It is imperative now that both the federal and the state governments side by side recognize the urgent need for equality in the treatment of all Nigerians, regardless of ethnic, tribal, or religious affiliations. The pervasive double standards in the enforcement of laws and the administrations of justice are not only destructive but also lead to dangerous and unintended consequences. In a nation already fraught with fragility, these disparities can ignite further conflict and unrest. Now, in the wake of this tragedy, the Edo State government, alongside security agencies, must take immediate actions to identify those responsible for this barbaric act, because it is essential that the perpetrators are brought to justice in a court of compensation or competent jurisdiction, ensuring a fair trial. However, it is crucial that the security forces conduct their operations with tact and sensitivity, avoiding pitfalls of becoming an occupying force that terrorizes innocent communities or members. Now, as the situation in Uromi escalates, the police and military presence intensifying, we must not overlook a critical precursor to the deaths of the Uromi 16. The escalating violence perpetrated on these Fulani headers across Nigeria just weeks before the Uromi killings. The state witnessed the tragic deaths of 27 farmers, a grim reminder of the ongoing security crisis plaguing the agricultural communities. Might you recall we mentioned an incident referring to the incineration of yams in Plateau State. Now, despite this alarming trend, the response from the state government was lackluster, with little effort made to compensate the victims' families or address the underlying issues. It becomes increasingly clear that Nigeria is grappling with a deep-seated crisis rooted in systemic justice. This tragic loss of innocent lives at the hands of Fulani headsmen has once again highlighted the dire consequences of a broken system where the rule of law seems to be overshadowed by political expediency and selective. Well, we've heard it all on Viewpoint today regarding the killings in Plateau State and Uromi, Edo State. It becomes distinctively clear that stakeholders have a whole lot to play. Even we citizens shouldn't be left out. From the chief executive, the executive arm of government, the legislature and the judiciary, the security apparatus or agencies, and citizens alike, we all have a role to play concerning the security within Nigeria. The show has been Viewpoint, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. And I've been your host, Odiawa AI. Thanks for watching.